Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. And today I want to talk to you about how I became a social media director. Now, I became this in the actual pandemic. So you can imagine how weird that has been. It's been weird, but it's also been really wonderful. So I wanted to just give you a little bit of insight into what really goes on in my day-to-day at work. So here it is. I started out my career working for Queen Latifah and her talk show at Sony. She had a talk show that was about to launch. I really wanted a job with her because, she's clearly the queen. She's amazing. So why wouldn't I want to work for her? And I was working for Wheel of Fortune at the time on the Sony lot, and I really wanted to get into social media. So what I did was I stalked the staff that was running the digital department at the show, and I wound up figuring out who that person was, and I requested to meet with her. And just like that, I got a meeting with her, and the rest is history. I'll make a video about more of that in the future, but I just wanted to preface that's how I pretty much started my career in social, from social. And then from there, I went on to work at BuzzFeed. And while I was there, I ran social media for Tasty, which I'm sure you know what that is, the little hand videos. Loved my time there, spent 3.5 years there, learned so much. Went on to get recruited to work for MTV and to do a very similar thing with their lifestyle brands. They wanted to bring back cribs and create more lifestyle content. So I was the director of lifestyle content, sort of social media geared position as well there. And then I went on to move from Los Angeles to New York. And that's where I live now. I moved from LA to New York to work for Tamron Hall on the Disney syndicated talk show, Tamron Hall, named after her. While I was there, I worked with her. I worked with the executives to really just iron out the digital and social media strategy for the talk show and for Tamron herself. Had a great time there as well. And now I moved on to now I am the director of social media at Shutterstock, which is a multi-asset licensing company. You can license video, photos, music, vectors, 3D, literally just about any sort of asset that you want to use to build marketing materials or anything for your business or anything like that. It's a really, really useful service, so I recommend you checking it out. So, what do I do every day, and what do I do as a social media director at Shutterstock? I'm going to get into that now. So before I get into that, I'm actually going to take a few steps back. I started this job about 6 months ago. We're in December now. And it was actually a really hard time for me because my uncle had just passed away and my life was kind of a mess. And I was just sort of going through it with the pandemic and all. And I really just needed a change. And this job came along and I was so grateful just because when you are at your downfall and you're just going through the motions, you're just literally just hoping for the best. And I just kept saying that, things are going to get better for me, career-wise and financially and everything. And it just sort of happened. I interviewed about 4 or 5 times, maybe 6. I don't recall exactly. And I was interviewing just all over Skype and, over the internet, basically. I never met anyone in person because we were still in the pandemic. So doing all these interviews, one of them was at my dad's house. I was in his garden room and I was talking to one of my new executives, potentially. And I interviewed with them, and then I pretty much got the offer by the end of the week after that last person that I talked to. Worked out those negotiations and all of that. Was happy with the offer. Really, really great. et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Then I started the job, right? Okay. So it's been a minute since I like started a new job and like didn't know anyone or anything about what was happening in the company or anything. This is that experience. So I started the job. 2 to 3 months of the job was learning who everyone was, because it's a lot when you don't go in an office and, you know, see people face to face. My last job, I was able to do that. So it was a lot easier to meet people and really understand what everyone did and, you know, all that jazz. So I didn't have that opportunity at this job, but obviously not going to let that bother me and just going to move on and figure it out. So over Slack, I was literally meeting everyone that I needed to work with every day and having one-on-ones with them, meeting with people. People would then introduce me to other people. So it was actually really cool to see like, oh, you should meet so-and-so. And so a lot of times that's how things were happening. And it was really great to see that actually occur, because I would have been quite lost without that happening. So then also I learned like all about the company, learned what the goals were, learned what the business strategy was, learned just like what my new situation was. That takes a minute to just sort of get your hands dirty and figure out what in the hell is going on at your new place. Fast forward 3 months. I'm now social media director. Well, I was before that too, but now I'm like really getting my feet dirty. And my first thing was to just sort of do a social media audit of all of the channels, learning the followings, learning what has done well, and learning the engagement on all of those channels. And just sort of assessing all of that information, and then taking that information and diving deep into strategy. That was the next step once I did that audit. Figuring out now, okay, we have all these channels, we have all of this stuff. What's done well? What's done great? What's done poorly? Readjusting the strategy to basically mirror what I determined from that audit into our new content strategy and social media strategy. We'll get into that a whole nother time of what that is and how to build out all of those things in another video. The next step, another part of my job is managing people, agencies, etc. Staying organized is also a big part of this job, which I am not the best at, but I'm getting better at it, and something I'm working on. So I manage an agency, and that agency is responsible for helping out with that strategy, whether it's copywriting, coming up with assets, helping with developing that strategy. They do pretty much everything. So I help manage them and just figure out what we're supposed to be doing and organize the content. We use Trello to organize all the content that we curate for the week. And basically in that Trello, it has like little, cells that basically say each content piece, and it has the content in it. They know exactly how to schedule it, when to post it, what platforms to put it on. They know everything about that piece of content and where it's supposed to go and what time it's supposed to go, all by just clicking on that tab. And that's how we stay organized. I don't think I could do it any other way. I'm a very visual person too, so I really need to see what exactly is going on. And like that, Trello has been a lifesaver. Recommend you get it. I'll do another video on that and how to use that at some point as well. So managing them, I also have 2 direct reports that report into me, a senior social media strategist and then an intern, both very lovely. They both report into me. So another part of my job is not only managing them, but also mentoring them. So I am the type of manager that is not just, hands off. I like to cultivate that mentorship and that relationship in terms of, furthering your career, helping you learn new things, teaching you things that I've learned over the past 10 years. And I think that's very valuable. I think that is one of the most important factors in management is mentoring. It's essentially you're like a teacher, but you're not like, actually you are kind of grading them. because you do performance reviews and all that. So, that is part of the job, and I don't take it lightly. It's part of the job, but it's also a very, very difficult part of the job as well, because you have someone's livelihood in your hands. Another part of this job, once you sort of figured out like all of the, like, I guess you would call it like the introduction of the table of contents, right? Figuring out the job, figuring out who's reporting to you, etc. Then you're going to want to try to figure out exactly, like, this is also part of the strategy part. What is the persona of your social media strategy? What are the buyer personas? Who is actually interested in the product? Because you need to tailor your strategy to that particular persona. So you need to know who that is. Like, you need to get into the business strategy department and, figure out like which customers that the company is really interested in attracting. And the social media content should always be through that lens of that particular, person. From there, I also cultivate relationships with different platforms. A lot of the platforms were already established, so I really didn't have to do much work there. But also a large part of the job is also setting up new platforms. We recently got on TikTok, so I had to set up those accounts, get them verified and all of that. Reach out to TikTok, find out what best practices are, try to get them to sneak up us in the algorithm a little bit. That doesn't work, by the way. And yeah, just like really trying to get those relationships going with the different platforms. Relationships are key. You have to develop relationships with these different platforms, because they are going to be the ones that tell you when things change. And as you all know, things change every single second. Another thing is just figuring out content strategy. What are you posting? Now that you've figured out those buyer personas and who the clients are and who the customers are, you now need to figure out what you're going to show them. So what does that mean? Are you posting videos? Are you posting photos? What types of content are you posting? Where are you posting it? Are you mixing it up? Are you just doing the same thing? Are you syndicating? Like, what your distribution plan is your strategy and your content plan. That's what you have to figure out next. And that's what I had to figure out with this new job. Another thing that is very important are determining goals and KPIs. I think that's something that is often overlooked in social media, but you really need to take a look at like how your content has performed and just set little goals for yourself even. And then set goals for the pages and then set goals for the company on social. Those are very important, and that is a large part of my job as well. Another part of the job is just really assessing and figuring out which platforms matter most. Do you really need to be on that LinkedIn page? Do you really need that Twitter page? Do you really need that Facebook page? Is Facebook dead? Figuring all of that out and making sure that you are utilizing your staff and or agency to the best of their ability is key, because you don't want to be wasting anyone's time, first of all, and time is what? Money. And then, of course, the day is spent sometimes publishing. I normally don't publish content that is left to our agency. However, I'm that type of, manager or whatever to really get my hands dirty. And sometimes I publish content if need be. I have to jump in sometimes when my folks are out of the office or on vacation or whatever. It's also my responsibility sometimes to publish content. Another part of the job is engagement. Engaging with customers, engaging with fans, or engaging with, people that are talking about the business. That is a large part of social media in itself. So it's also a large part of this role, also overseeing the folks that do have those keys to make those messages for the company. That's part of my gig as well, making sure that they are in line with our our brand and our brand voice. A huge part of being a social media director is analyzing the data and figuring out what is working, what isn't working, and creating reports and sending those off to executives so they have an idea of what is performing well, how can they help. All of that stuff is from analytics and data. Data is so important in this role. And a large part of my day is spent analyzing that data and figuring out what's working, changing things around, adjusting strategy to, what is needed at the time. All of that encompasses in this role. And it can be quite overwhelming sometimes because there is a lot of data, as you know, and there are a lot of platforms, but just managing all of that and managing, expectations and whatnot with that, I think is a large part of a social media director and their role. And that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of what I do. I mean, obviously there's like things that I didn't mention that are in the day-to-day things. And then there are a lot of things that come up, periodically that you need to address throughout the day. I love my job so much. Like, there is nothing better to me than waking up every day and being able to work in something that I love so much, which is social media. I've always loved social media since I was a kid. This is weird saying, since I was a kid. My God, am I really that old? No, like, I literally, when Facebook came around, I was like, how do I get an account? I was so fascinated with it. With MySpace, I loved it. When my professor, shout out to Jen Reeves, told me about Twitter, I was so excited to log on to that. I was, probably one of the first people, one of the first millions of people to log on to Twitter. And yeah, I've just been a really big fan of how social media connects people, connects communities, connects businesses to their customers, and all of that. I say all of that to say one of the big parts of this role, and I keep saying one of the big parts of this role, but there are, as you can tell, a lot of big parts to it. Another one of the big parts is reassessing that strategy. If you find out something that isn't working, figuring out how to change and, reverse course or change course is very important with this role. And you have to be able to think on your feet, think strategically, and think quickly all the time, every day. That's a social media manager. That's anyone in social media pretty much. But definitely in this role, I find that it is definitely a necessity that someone can be able to think really quickly. Hopefully that was all helpful to you. If you have any questions, feel free to drop a comment below. Also, if you have any questions on trying to find a job in social media, feel free to put those in the comments as well. Happy to answer any questions you have on that. If you have any questions on how I got any of those jobs that I mentioned previously, feel free to drop those questions in the bottom as well. And but please like and subscribe. Please, more videos coming. I promise you. Stay tuned. See you guys.